Good morning one and all. Today I would like to give a presentation on Agile Methodology. Now we will see why Agile Methodology. It is used to overcome the problems facing with traditional software lifecycle models like waterfall model and spiral model. For example, in waterfall model, we'll start off with design phase and then we will move on to coding once the design phase is completed. But when you have moved on to the coding phase, there is no chance that you can get back to the design phase as it follows a linear approach. In contrast, Agile methodology uses an incremental approach. Now have a look at Agile project life cycle. First it starts with planning. In planning, what we will do is we will break down the requirements into small units and then we will prioritize the requirements so that high priority requirements go in the first release, and then we will schedule the iterations like when the next iteration should start, and then we will go for feedback by giving demonstrations and conducting retrospection meetings. Retrospection means conducting the survey based on past data, and then we move on to implementation phase where we will do the design, coding, test driven development. Test driven development means first we will write the test cases and then we will try to write code in order to satisfy that test case. And pair programming. Pair programming means say suppose A and B are two developers. A will be performing coding for a particular module and B will be performing coding for another module, and then A will be checking the code of B and B will be checking the code of A. This is what is called pair programming. And then once they have finished doing their coding part, they will do the integration testing, and then we will be moving to testing phase where we will be doing the testing either based on automation testing tools or manually, and we will perform regression testing at the end, and then again the process continues. The Agile Manifesto. We are uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others do it. Through this work, we have come to value individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Instead of concentrating more on the processes that we use, we have to concentrate more on the individuals and interactions between the business people and the technical people. The next one is working software over comprehensive documentation. While we are having business demos, instead of showing them the documentation on a particular project, it is far better to show them a working piece of software. The next one is customer collaboration over contract negotiation. And finally, responding to change over following a plan. That is, while there is value in the items on the right, we value the items on the left more. Now, we will see the advantages of Agile model. The first one is customer satisfaction by rapid continuous delivery of useful software. People and interactions are emphasized rather than process and tools. Customers, developers and testers constantly interact with each other in the daily scrum meetings, etc. Working software is delivered frequently, weeks rather than in months. Face-to-face conversation is the best form of communication. Close daily cooperation between business people and developers. Continuous attention to technical excellence and good design. Regular adaptation to changing circumstances. And lastly, even late changes in the requirements are welcomed. This is one of the most important advantages of Agile model. In not all scenarios, you can use Agile model. There are some situations where you can make use of this Agile model. Those are when new changes are needed to be implemented. The freedom Agile gives to change is very important. New changes can be implemented at very little cost because of the frequency of new increments that are produced. To implement a new feature, the developers need to lose only the work of a few days or even only hours to roll back and implement it. Rolling back is something to delete a piece of code that has already been incorporated, And the next one is, unlike the waterfall model, in agile model very limited planning is required to get started with the project. This is because it has very short iterations. Agile assumes that the end user's needs are ever changing in a dynamic business and IT world. Changes can be discussed and features can be newly affected or removed based on feedback. This effectively gives the customer the finished system they want or need. And finally, both system developers and stakeholders alike find they also get more freedom of time and options than if the software was developed in a more rigid sequential way. Having options gives them the ability to leave important decisions until more or better data or even entire hosting programs are available, meaning the project can continue to move forward without fear of reaching a sudden standstill. As we have already seen what an agile model is, now we will look into some real-time practices which are currently used by software industries nowadays. Those are adaptive software development, agile modeling, agile unified process, crystal clear methods, disciplined agile delivery, dynamic systems development method, extreme programming, feature driven development, lean software development, Kanban development, Scrum and Scrumban. Shortly we will see in detail about the Scrum process model. Here comes the actual Scrum model. Scrum uses real-world progress, not an uninformed forecast, to plan and schedule releases. Time is divided into short work cadences known as sprints, typically 1 week or 2 weeks long. At the end of each sprint, stakeholders and team members meet to see a demonstrated potentially shippable product increment and plan its next steps. This allows direction to be adjusted based on completed work, not speculation or predictions. Scrum is a simple set of roles, responsibilities and meetings that never change. Now we will see the actual Scrum model in practice. This diagram helps you in understanding how a Scrum model works. It starts with the product backlog. Product backlog, you can imagine it as a large database which contains all the client requirements but in a prioritized way. And then out of product backlog, we will be taking some of the requirements as part of this sprint backlog. Here the features assigned to sprint and then estimated by team. The developers of the team will be giving an estimate of how many hours each requirement will take to complete. Once this is done, based on the feasibility and the complexity of the requirements, the team will decide whether or not to commit on a particular requirement in the current sprint. Once this process is completed, they will be moving on to the development followed by the testing. Once the entire testing is done, the working piece of software will be ready for deployment and it is deployed to the next release and the next cycle starts. This is how the process repeats. Here are some meetings which are important in this Scrum model. We will be discussing more on the meetings in the upcoming slides. There are some important terms associated with this Scrum process which we will look into now. First comes the sprint. Sprint is the time duration which is needed to complete an entire iteration or a cycle. Next comes the product backlog. It is a repository of client prioritized requirements. Next comes sprint backlog. It is a subset of product backlog in which the requirements will be present for the current sprint. Next comes sprint planning meeting. In sprint planning meeting, all the stakeholders meet to commit on the particular requirement for the current sprint. Stakeholders include business people, technical people, finance people and marketing people, etc. Then comes sprint review meeting. In sprint review meeting, usually they will be giving the demos on project features and also they will conduct some retrospective meetings on the sprint adjustments. Next comes the daily Scrum meeting. In the daily Scrum meeting, there are three things that are important. First one is, what are the things that are done since the last meeting? Next one is, what is the plan for today? The next thing is roadblocks or impediments that are preventing the developers or testers from doing their work. Next comes Scrum roles. Here there are 3 roles. First one is product owner. He is from the business side. Next one is Scrum Master, who is responsible for clearing the roadblocks of the team members. Finally, the team, which includes the developers, testers and all other people of the project. Here comes another diagram which explains the Scrum model. Out of the product backlog, a sprint backlog has been prepared and it is ready for the sprint, which takes place for 2 to 4 weeks, as part of which a daily Scrum meeting happens for every 24 hours. Once the iteration completes, a potentially shippable product is released to the client. Here comes another similar diagram with client prioritized feature list in this sprint backlog. Just have a look at it. Now look at the summary of what we have discussed so far. First, we have discussed what is an agile model. Agile model believes that every project needs to be handled differently and the existing methods need to be tailored to best suit the project requirements. In Agile, the tasks are divided to time boxes that are small time frames to deliver specific features for a release. Iterative approach is taken and working software build is delivered after each iteration. Each build is incremental in terms of features. The final build holds all the features required by the customer. Next, we have looked at the Scrum process. Scrum is an iterative and incremental agile software development framework for managing product development. A key principle of Scrum is its recognition that during a project, the customers can change their minds about what they want and need. The following are the web references based on which the PPT has been prepared. For more information, you can go visit these links. Thank you.